Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts. Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. We are so excited and grateful that you decided to join us for today's episode of the show. And today on the podcast, we are really excited to be joined by Angela Laws from Trusted Housesitters. If you guys are sort of wondering what Trusted Housesitters is, and you maybe think that you've heard of it before, you may have. It's something that we've talked about on the podcast a little bit before with other guests, and it's a really popular way to travel around the world, especially for some digital nomads.
Yeah, and for us, we've done episodes in the past where we talk to travelers who stay in house sits and take care of pets and take care of plants. And that's really one of the ways that they make a digital nomad or a traveling lifestyle work, to find great accommodations for low prices. And we've thought about it before, but there's always been kind of things that have gotten in the way, and there's some things that are tricky about it. You have to find the right opportunities and build trust to get new ones. And so we wanted to go right to the source, and having a community manager from Trusted Housesitters and someone like Angela, who's actually been house sitting for over a decade, to talk about how to get started, to answer all the practical questions, all the challenging questions that you might have about house sitting, and how it could be a really interesting way to travel or even not to travel. You can do this in your area at home, places that are closer to home, which at this time is something that's, something that lots of us are thinking about.
Yeah, and just for context on this episode, we recorded with Angela on January 14th, so mid-January, before the global pandemic and everything was kind of blowing up in the US and Canada and the places that we were at that time with coronavirus. So if you hear us talking about anything that sounds totally weird for the situation that we're in, that's why. It's just because we were doing this before any of us knew what was about to happen in mid-March.
And even though your international travel plans might be on hold right now, and all travel plans at the moment, but in the coming months, as things start to open back up again, Trusted House Sitters and house sitting in general is a great way to make travel possible in some cases where you might have thought it's not possible. Maybe you don't have the budget, or you're just starting out working online and you don't feel like you have the income to support traveling around to different cities. So doing something like getting started, doing a couple house sits in the upcoming fall closer to home could be a great way to give yourself more freedom and possibilities when we are out exploring and traveling the world once again.
Yes, but for now, we hope that you are staying home, staying safe, and we hope that you enjoyed this episode of the show with Angela Laws. Angela, welcome to the podcast today. We're super excited to have you here with us.
Thank you, Amanda. And I'm super excited to speak to you guys as well. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. And where are you joining us from today?
I'm actually joining you from our headquarters in Brighton, England, which is about an hour south of London. We're a Brighton-born company. We've been here 10 years this year, and we started off in Brighton, and we've remained here.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's so much we want to dive in with you today about, but I think that a good place to start is to back up. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you first got into travel, what made you excited about working with Trusted Housesitters and house sitting in general?
Oh, absolutely. I've been traveling since, since the early 70s. I started off I actually emigrated to Canada, and I've been fortunate to go across from coast to coast in Canada, a lot of the States. And I'm one of these people that when I see a plane in the air, I want to be on it. And I really believe that travel is the biggest educator, and it teaches you so much about yourself, teaches you so much about other people, and it's actually the way you learn. Travel, it's just that, that insatiable appetite to know and get to know people. And my other passion as well is pets. In fact, I have 3 passions: pets, people, and places. And so what I do right now, is just my job in heaven. And how, like, the travel part of it is just so important. I mean, my children traveled with me as well, and it opened their eyes to so much. And then my husband, who is a retired now, but he was a petroleum engineer. And so we lived the life of an expat for nearly 30 years. I spent 6 years in India, living in Bombay, North Africa, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. And so it's just, that it's almost in my DNA. And it's so important because, as I say, you learn so much about yourself and other people. And my other passion is animals. And I think I came out of the womb with a leash in my hand. And I've had animals all of my life. And we had a Springer Spaniel that lived all over the world for us. In fact, if they'd have had air miles for animals, she'd have had more than a lot of people, because she came to North Africa with us, and then she lived, as I say, all over with us, and Canada, England, France, you name it, she was almost there. And we took her to Canada when we relocated back to Vancouver Island. And she obviously, sadly, the one problem with our animals is the fact that they don't live long enough. And so we had her for 14 amazing years. And it was when she passed away that I actually got into pet sitting. And then I found that I could pet sit, have animals in my life, and travel, and have all of that. And it's just the most amazing way of connecting with places that you might not otherwise go to. So when Holly passed away, I'd had a sitter for her when we lived on Vancouver Island the last Christmas that she was with us. And when she passed away, I was contacted by the sitter that I'd had. And she was chatting, and she wanted to know how Holly was. And obviously she found out that she was no longer with us. And she said, Angela, you love animals so much. I'd love you to help me do what I do. And that's how I started. And then found that I could go to places that I would otherwise never go to, off of the tourist route, to places where, even living on Vancouver Island, I'd been to Victoria a number of times, but I'd never really seen Victoria and the surrounding areas. But by going down there to pet sit and look after a cat for 3 weeks, I discovered places that I otherwise would never have seen. And that's the beauty of what we do.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. It's incredible to hear that you've been able to, one, travel so much yourself and with your family, but then also travel with an animal. I know that that's no easy feat. So that's really amazing that you've been able to do that. And then to take the experiences from that and then get into pet sitting is really cool. And so did you start pet sitting before you found out about Trusted House Sitters, or like kind of what came first for you there?
Yeah, it's the chicken or the egg. It's actually, I'd started to pet sit before Trusted House Sitters was in existence even. I was with, and then when I discovered it outside of using a platform, I then looked at it and looked at other platforms and thought, how could I actually, get these sits? Sort of, I was going by word of mouth, but get sits in other areas that I might not be traveling to. So I did join a couple of other platforms, and that's how I came to Trusted House Sitters. And the way I came to Trusted House Sitters was I received an email saying that this company, Trusted House Sitters, was starting, and would I be interested in joining as a member? It was sort of marketing email that I got. But the difference with it was that this was going to be a pet sitting organization that wanted to build this community of pet-loving travelers that would actually look after pets without cost, that they wouldn't charge, that they would do it for free out of a passion for, having and being around animals. And sort of backtracking a bit about Holly and the fact that I traveled with her and she traveled everywhere. To be really honest with you, Amanda, it was difficult traveling with her. And I know, having done that she would much rather have been safe and secure in her own home. and that all of those, that getting on the aeroplane and doing all that stuff was not what she really wanted to do. And this is where we think about, if only animals could talk. If you said to your dog or your cat or whatever, okay, do you want to come and queue up and see the Eiffel Tower with me? Or would you rather stay in your bed, get fed when you know you're going to get fed, and sleep and walk? And what would you rather do? And I guarantee you that they would actually turn around and say, you know what, Mum, I'd really rather stay home. And so traveling with Holly, as I did, I saw that side of it. And so when I got this email and when I looked into it, I'm a bit of a detective. If I want to find something out, I will find it out, and I'm like a dog with a bone, and I go and I go and I go until I find the answers. And I tracked down this chap called Andy Peck, who started this company. And I contacted him, and I found his number, and I called him. And I was actually house sitting in Wiltshire in the UK, which is, sort of a beautiful part, not far from London, about 2 hours from Brighton, actually. And I managed to get hold of Andy, and I had a conversation with him. And he said, and obviously I tweaked his imagination or did something, because he said to me, where are you? And I told him, and he said, how about if I come to see you? So he drove to Wiltshire, which was about 2 hours, 3 hours from Brighton. And we sat down in the kitchen of the house that I was sitting in. And I was looking after a cat at the time. And we sat down, and this conversation lasted for 4.5 hours. And at the end of that time, Andy said, would you be interested in helping me? This was a startup company, it was very, very thin, sort of financially, it was bare bones, and it was him starting this up. And I just connected with this young man so much. And it was this community of pet lovers who wanted to travel and take care of pets for free because they loved animals so much. And that's what resonated with me. And my background is sales, marketing, and PR. And that's what I've done my entire career. And so I knew that I could help him in that respect, but I also knew I could help him from this passionate, point of I love animals so much. And I'm very aware of what their needs are, and very aware of what owners' expectations and needs are. And I was still living in Vancouver, in Canada. And so I worked remotely, and I joined him. And the rest, as I say, is history. But there's a lot of history that's gone through in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I'm sure that just the growth, and as time passes, and how big Trusted House Sitters has gotten, I'm sure there's lots of interesting stuff to hear about and dive into. And just so we kind of, I guess, maybe to like set a foundation, I'm guessing most of the people who are listening know what house sitting is. You've talked about it a few times. We've interviewed a few people who have done it. But just in case anyone's like not too familiar and they're like, wait, house sitting, like, wait, you're taking care of someone's house. Can you give us kind of a general overview of like what house sitting is? What kind of like a typical house sitting, I guess maybe you'd call it a job or a task, or what the type of time and like animals are typically taken care of, and who the type of people who are like really good fits to look into house sitting are?
Absolutely. I mean, there isn't a typical house sit, because they're all in different locations, all different homes, but the responsibilities that go with them are exactly the same. And that is the key. Who fits to becoming a pet and house sitter? First of all, it's somebody who loves animals, somebody who's experienced with animals and who is aware of their needs and their expectations. It's also somebody that really has to like people, because there's a lot of communication that goes with this. And if I sort of just go through the process of how it would work with Trusted House Sitters, and actually that's probably how it works with most platforms, but it's also the way that it's the blueprint for a successful house sit. And that is, an owner will come to Trusted House Sitters and they'll prepare their listing. And that's what you see when you open the site and you see the pictures of the homes. The owners come on there and they've given us pictures of their homes and their pets. And they've put into that listing their expectations, the needs of their pets, what it is that they expect from a sitter, as far as their home. For instance, Many of our owners have lovely homes and they have lovely gardens. Well, in the summertime, that may mean that you're going to have to water some plants, or you might want to cut the grass, or you can go and stay in an apartment where you've got a window box and that's just a bit of water twice a day. And so it's all different, and it depends on the skills and experiences that you have. But the owner will come to the site. They'll put their listing up, pictures of their pets, all of their pets' requirements, and it will go live onto the site. And then when it goes live, there's an email that's sent out. Our sitters come to the site, they join, they create a profile, and that profile is what owners will use in their selection process. So the more time and preparation and care and passion that you give to that profile, it's time well spent, because that's what the owner's going to look at. It's like applying for a job. And if you're looking at becoming a pet and house sitter, as I say, the first thing is you have to love pets. But if you're looking at becoming a pet and house sitter because you've heard about how you can travel and stay for free and go to all these places, if you're looking to use it as free accommodation only, it's not for you, because that's not what it is. It's much, much more. Yes, your accommodation is free. Yes, you get to stay in lovely homes, but you've got pets that are your priority. You've got a home that's your priority. And those are the two things. But the payback is huge, because you get to stay in your own home away from home. You connect with a community. You get under the skin of places. You don't just visit a place, you stay there. You don't visit and leave, you stay and live. And that's the difference. So you need to be responsible. You need to be reliable. You need to be somebody who is a good planner. You need to be somebody that, is so aware of yourself. We have sitters that are couples. We have sitters that are single, both male and female. We have young, old. I mean, there is an age limit on the site of 21, but our average is probably about 25. There's no upper age limit, providing you're healthy and you're active. And provided you realize that along with all of those benefits, which is a free home and free accommodation, comes responsibility. And so it's like, yes, I want to do this. You give and you get back. And it's like the owners, they give and they get back. It's the sharing economy working at its very best. And it's a win-win. But I always say it's a win-win-win, because the biggest winners in all of these are the animals. And that's what we're connected by.
Yeah, I think that was a really good point too, about just kind of the responsibilities that are involved, and not thinking about like, oh, hey, sweet, I'm going to get this like free accommodation, but it's an exchange. It's just an exchange. Instead of, you paying money for your accommodation, you're paying in terms of the care that you're giving to your animals, the effort that you're putting into taking care of things, all of that stuff. And I think if you go into any exchange thinking that it's all about you getting and not about the things that you need to provide to make it a beneficial relationship, it's not gonna work out well. And I think also it's about, realizing like if you love animals, well then the exchange is a great deal for you, because you get to spend time with animals. And it makes me think about Amanda and I stayed at an Airbnb, I guess it's a year ago at this point, in Guatemala. And it was a really cool house, and the owner had a cat there. And we were staying for a bit over a week. And he just said like, oh, do you want the cat to stay? Do you want the cat to go? And we were like, oh yeah, we'd love to have the cat, because both of us really do love animals, but we're traveling all the time and never really get to spend any time with animals. And I think especially a cat, because it's like so easy to take care of. We just put some food out twice while we were there, basically. And he had his own area to use the washroom. But it was just like such a lovely experience to have an animal around. And it added to our trip the fact that we were able to interact with them.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, from my perspective and from many others, because remote working is booming. I mean, it's getting so big. I believe there's a stat that says in 2021, 52% of the American workforce will be working remotely, which means, as long as you've got a good internet connection, you can work from anywhere in the world, and your office view can be the Caribbean. It's been mine. I mean, your office view can be the most amazing English countryside. It's been mine. And so, you have that ability to be able to work remotely. But there's a danger on that side as well, and that is because you're working remotely, because you don't have everybody getting up and leaving at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, that you become, you become attached to this machine in front of you, and you never get away from it, because there's always another email to answer, there's always another piece of content to write. But when you've got a dog sitting by the side of you who's looking at you and saying, you know what, I need to go for a walk right now, you get away from that. And what better way to start your working day than to get up an hour earlier and go for an amazing walk with the dog, and then come back and feed them, then sit down and work. You've had your exercise. You've not just exercised your body, you've exercised your mind. You've looked at different, and you've got this creature who then is lying at your feet. And it's, or you walk outside and you have to feed the horses. You get the horses in. I mean, we look after every animal. We're not just dogs and cats, we're horses. This in 2019, I went and did a sit for 3 weeks in England, and I had 3 Cooney pigs. And they are large creatures. And one of them, his name was George. And these pigs were even allowed in the house. And George used to eat in the house. I have to say that I'm rather glad that they weren't allowed upstairs into the bedrooms on the beds. But they and he came into the kitchen every day, and he had his breakfast. And so that took me away from my computer for that amount of time. And then when I came back, I was ready to go again. And so that it gives you that work-life balance, which if we're not careful, we don't have.
Yeah. It's funny as you say that. Both Amanda and I have talked about when we've set our goals this year of we need to create better work-life balance. We need to create better boundaries, because we're exactly like you described, right? Those remote workers where you have that blessing of we're living in Panama. It's amazing. We get to work from our apartment. We get to set our own schedules, but we often find ourselves working at all hours of the day because we don't have that hard leave the office break. And we've always thought about it okay, it's this mental thing, this habit thing, but maybe we just need to get 2 pigs. And we could have solved
2
the problem.
pigs or 2 dogs. Absolutely. I mean, but no, I mean, yes, working remotely gives you so much freedom. And when you're like you are, when you're content creators, this travel gives you, it gives you, and it's insatiable what it can do for you as far as, inspiration and seeing things from different angles and creating all this content that people live vicariously through you and through the, whatever it is you create. But you also, and I know this, you also need to take care of yourself. And there is so much research out there that backs up this fact that being around animals, having animals in your life, it is good for your well-being. It lifts you. It's companionship. We have a sitter who lives in Vancouver, and she's adorable. She's been with us 4 or 5 years, and she travels solo, and she's in her 50s, and she never ever goes on a house sit with cats, not because she doesn't like them. She loves them. She always goes with dogs. And the reason she goes with dogs, she will tell you, is because when she sits with dogs, she has to go out. She goes out. And what happens when you're with a dog and you're walking? Somebody will stop and talk to you, and you make those connections. And this is the one thing that I just absolutely love about what we have and about Trusted Housesitters is this community, and these connections that we're making, and the stories, and just those relationships that are being built. And this is another thing, we have owners coming to the site who say, two things that they usually say. One is, why would I trust a stranger, and why would I have a stranger in my home? And we go back and we say, well, you're absolutely right. No, you wouldn't have a stranger in your home. You wouldn't invite somebody you didn't know into your home, give them full responsibility of your home and your pets, and walk away and give them the keys. And they're not strangers. With Trusted House Sitters, because of the process that happens when an owner comes to the site and a sitter comes to the site, and they first connect, by the time that sitter arrives at the home, they're not strangers anymore. They know one another. They've built up a relationship. They've Skyped, they've emailed, they have profiles to go by. And it is an arrangement that is built on trust initially. However, there is so much information available to both sides that in the end, the decision that is made by the owner and the sitter, because it has to be right for both parties, it can't be just one-sided, it has to be right. And the decision that's made by both is an educated one, and they make it on the information and that's how it works. If it ever does not work, and we've got thousands of sits going on around the world, and we've been going for 10 years, and there are times when it hasn't worked, and really those times have come about because there wasn't enough communication. The right communication, the right questions, and the right everything to make sure that it was going to work. But it does work. I mean, it's working right now in thousands of homes around the world.
Hey friends, we're just taking a quick little break from the podcast to talk about the World Wanderers Insider. The World Wanderers Insider is our podcast that is just for Patreon community members. And so what you get when you join the Patreon community is access to the World Wanderers Insider, which gives you one extra episode of the podcast per month. These episodes are with guests who are digital nomads, as well as with ourselves answering your questions, talking about things we've learned over the last couple years as we've traveled the world, worked, grown our businesses, and so much more.
Yeah, so if you go to patreon.com/theworldwanders and sign up to be a part of the community, you get access to the Insider podcast, where you'll find episodes about teaching English online, about both of our stories, really going into detail about our digital nomad careers and how we've made that work. And this most recent episode that we did with Nathan Aguilera from Foodie Flashpacker, talking about his journey into being able to support himself by running a food and travel blog, something that I know is really exciting, but it's hard to actually find information about people who actually have gone out there and do it, the work that's required, the time that's required. So we were really excited to break that down with Nathan on the most recent episode of the Insider podcast.
Yeah, so if that sounds like something you might be interested in, head on over to patreon.com/theworldwanderers. All right, back to the episode.
I'd love to dive in and get kind of like a little bit into the nitty gritty of house sitting. I think that we probably have people listening who are on both sides of things, people who maybe are thinking about wanting to travel more and feeling maybe constrained by the fact that they don't know how to get their animals taken care of, or putting them in some type of pet daycare service is too expensive. So I think it could be a really good option for them. But I'd really love to focus on those travelers who are interested in, traveling to do house sitting. And I think something we've heard, and I think what people have talked to have heard, it's like you hear people who are doing really well with house sitting. They love animals. They've been able to find some good opportunities to do it. Someone the other day was telling us about how, I can't remember if it was a friend of theirs or someone they knew had been able to do like 3 consecutive house sits in a row in New York City or something like that over the course of the winter, and was able to kind of stay their whole time in that city based off that. But I know it can be challenging on any service where it's kind of reputation based to get through that first layer of, getting your first opportunities when you don't have lots of people to vouch for you. So if someone's interested in starting out and they want to set up a Trusted House Sitters profile and get started with house sitting, they've had pets in the past but aren't, an animal expert, what are like the steps you take to, going and getting those first few gigs and kind of getting some momentum going with it?
Yeah, really, really good question. And it's the same question that new members ask all the time. And those, like you say, those are thinking. Let's backtrack. I've been doing this now for 14 years. I've been doing it with Trusted Housesitters for 10. And I do it full time. I don't have a home anymore. My home went 3 years ago. And so
Wow.
I travel full time as well as working for Trusted Housesitters full time. And the reason I do that is because I love what I do, but also it keeps me connected with our community. I'm actually doing what our members are doing every day. And we all started in the same place. Every single one of us started without that experience. But I always say house sitting in particular is not rocket science. If you've actually had a home and you've kept a home, then you know how you keep a home, but you also keep an owner's home the way they leave it. And often we leave it better than when we found it, because that's simply what we're there for. But when you first start out, we survey our owner member, or all of our members, all of the time. But owner members, we survey differently to sitter members and ask them what they want. When an owner is asked, what's the most important thing you look for in a sitter's profile, they will invariably say it's the reviews or references. And there are verifications as well. So when a sitter comes to the site, a sitter is thinking of joining the site and getting into house sitting, that profile is the most important thing. It's like your resume for a job, and it is like applying for a job, but also references. Now, they will say, but I've never done any house sitting, so I don't have any house sitting references. But that's not what you need. What you need is references, and you can get external references from people you've worked with, from people that know you, anybody that can attest to your trustworthiness and your reliability and your responsibility and your love for animals. Anybody that knows that about you, you can actually apply, email them, and their references will be then on your profile, so you have references. There's also verification steps, step 1 and step 2, which is actually verifying who you are. It's letting that owner know that if you've got the 2 steps of verification, that your passport says who you are, your driving license, your email, your telephone, and those are the verifications. But it's really the references that owners are looking for. I just had a conversation with a young woman called Dina, and she had applied. She joined the site, and she was applying for sits, and she said she applied for about 15, 20 sits, and she didn't get anything. And then she reread, and she looked, and she looked at other sitters' profiles, and she suddenly looked and saw that many of them had references as well as Trusted Housesitters reviews. So what she did was she went out to somebody that she'd worked for, and she asked them if they put a reference. The one reference on her profile made all the difference. The next sit she applied for, she got it. The other thing that I would say is it's very easy when you come to the site and you start looking through all the sits and you go, oh my goodness, there's one in, St. Kitts and Nevis, there's one in Australia, there's one here, there's one there. And you're sitting in San Diego, California, or you're sitting anywhere and you go, oh, I want to go to the other side of the world. That's great. But you start, you walk before you run, and you start at home. If it's possible to get local sits, and you apply to that owner, and that owner knows that you can actually visit their home before you go and do the sit, that they can actually get to know you on a personal level, and also that you're flexible, that you can actually go at short notice. They're the types, that you apply for. And that's how you start. It's starting locally. But the most important thing is applying for the right sit, knowing yourself. No, I mean, for example, when I say the right sit, say there's a house sit that's not far from you, and you look at it and you go, yeah, great. I love I love dogs, and they've got 2 Springer Spaniels. But you're somebody that actually, while you like walking dogs, you don't really want to go out 3 times a day and run for 2 hours around. you wouldn't actually apply for a house sit that's got 2 Springer Spaniels that probably need to be walked 3 times a day, at least an hour a time, and they will keep running after you've walked them. But you might want to go and look after a little chihuahua that wants to sit on your knee all day while you work or do something else. So it's applying for the right sit. And you know, also with the homes, there's expectations that you will keep it clean and tidy, that you will, you know, you will care for it because it's, you know, it's somebody else's home, but if you care for it like it is your own home.
Yeah, those are amazing tips. And I mean, I can definitely from like we haven't done a house sit, I guess, but from the perspective of like we look for Airbnbs constantly traveling, and I'm always a little bit hesitant to book something that doesn't have any reviews. And it's not because I feel like it's guaranteed to be bad. It's just like reviews are really great to have. So I can definitely understand like if I was going to leave my house, I would definitely want somebody with reviews. So it's cool to know that you can get like put reviews from something else, because I do feel like it is challenging with that first review, right? Like it's kind of like when you start your career and nobody hires you because you don't have experience and you're like, I need somebody to take a chance on me so I can prove myself type thing.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you see, I must have experience. Well, okay. If I don't, I'm not allowed to get the experience. How can I get it? And it's that. And sorry, Amanda, what were you going to ask?
Oh, I was just going to ask, we talked a little bit about some specific things, but do you have any other tips for like making your profile, I guess, just come across as trustworthy and not in the way of like deceiving people that you're somebody that you're not, but just things that people are kind of looking for in general that can help you get noticed a little bit better on the platform?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, whatever experience you've got, and I know there are many that if you love animals, you've been out there and you may have volunteered somewhere, or you may have helped somebody do something, or you may have looked after friends and families' pets. Any of that, anything that you know that makes you stand out, that they go, oh my word, and what it is, it's imagining that person stepping into your home and stepping into your life. So with your profile, it's and you know, a picture speaks 1,000 words. So put great pictures up, pictures that show you with animals, pictures that show you with people and animals, because you've got to get on with the people as well. So it's that communication, but go through what I say is a really good introductory line. So sit down and think about what your attributes are. Think about what your strengths are. And we all have them. You know, don't ever think you don't, because you do. So just list half a dozen of your real strengths and look at them and choose one as a strap line that gets people's attention. And always remember that you only get one chance to make a good impression. So as well as that profile and creating that and crafting it really, really well. And another tip is to go to the site and browse through profiles of really experienced sitters. Don't copy what they've written, because it has to be about you. It's not for you, it's about you. Your profile you're creating for the owner, but it's about you. So look at these profiles and have a tip. And one tip that I use is, when you've got that reference from that external reference from somebody, if they've put a line in there that is really great, that is attention grabbing, start your profile off with it in quotes. This is somebody else saying something good about you, not you saying something good about yourself. And so it's that third party. I mean, my profile on the site, I start off with, you know, 2 lines from a review that I've got with Trusted Housesitters, and it's just saying, you know, how well I looked after their animals and how much I solved their problem about being able to travel. And so it's crafting all that, and the images are very, very important as well. But the other thing that is so important is the way that you apply for the sit. you've done your profile, you've crafted that, you've added the references, you've done the review, you've done your verifications, you've got this wonderful bio that somebody's going to look at and say, you know what, I want to have a conversation with this person. But the thing that they see first is your application email. That's the message that goes into their inbox when you're applying for that sit. And so you make it personalized. You look at this, and some owners make it really, really easy for you. They will write a lot of things in their listing, the pets' names, what they like, and this, that, and the other. And you can look at this and you can craft this email around this and really personalize it like you've actually read the listing. Do you know it's surprising how many new sitters apply for a sit and don't even mention the pets? And that's not going to go anywhere. It's really not going to get the owner looking at it and saying, because another question that owners ask, well, if they're coming to stay in my home and they're coming because they're using this for travel, how much time are they going to spend with my pets? So what they need to know is that their pets are going to be that priority. And so you look at the listing and you apply for it. And what I've done in the past, and I've done this a few times and it's always worked, is I've actually written to the pets. I've said, dear Charlie and George, Mum and Dad are going away, but don't worry, you're not going to be alone, because John and I really want to come and spend time with you. And I read this and then I send it. But what I do after that is I send a very short one to Mum and Dad, and I say, by the way, I'm not a complete lunatic. I did it I did it to get your attention. And you know what? Every time I've got the sit. It's worked every single time. But yes, it's that message to them, that personalized message. It's like applying for a job. You've got to get their attention. And like I said before, you only get one chance to make a good first impression. I can tell you from personal experience, I had a house in Vancouver, and we used to travel all the time. And the reason we sold our house is because we were never in it, because we were pet sitting around the world all the time. And I had always gone for more mature sitters. I didn't have pets. It was just my home. And this one time we were going away for 3 months, and it was actually at Christmas time. And I got about 20 applications, and all of them were really, really experienced, more mature sitters. But I got one application from a really young couple, and I read her email. I read her message, and it was written so beautifully, and it was so warm, and it was so genuine, and it was so caring that I actually immediately it resonated with me. And I got in touch with them, and long story short, I engaged them. They came and looked after our home. They came up from Costa Rica into Vancouver in December. We picked them up from the airport, and they came out in shorts, T-shirts, and flip-flops. And it was like, oh my goodness, it's cold. And what they were doing were getting all of their winter clothes from thrift shops. They'd been in Costa Rica for 6 months sitting, and they came up to us, and they looked after our home. And she joined a quilting class, and she made me a quilt as a thank you. And when I came home, and my house was immaculate when I left, and when I came back, it was immaculate. We'd kept in touch, and that's another thing for owners. You'll never not know what your pets are doing and how your home is if you don't want to, because we just keep in contact all the time. I've just finished a sit where the couple went to Japan skiing, and they had a cat, Fluffy, and Fluffy sent them videos, and Fluffy sent them pictures, but that's what can happen. And so anyway, after the 3 months, Charlie left me this quilt. I went to her wedding last year, and that was 5 years ago. And that's the relationships that we build up.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so much good information in there. And I think it's like, some of that stuff, I think beyond house sitting is just really good life advice and kind of good job advice as well. Just taking some time before you start thinking like, okay, press yes, copy paste my thing in here to actually read what people are looking for, to personalize it, to share more about yourself, I think is such great advice and such good tips. And so I want to be mindful of your time. And so just one kind of final question, but on the other side of the equation, it's important to, if you're trying to go in and get a house sit, to know what is going to be a good environment for you and what's going to be like the best type of situation to make it, mutually beneficial. What do you kind of look for when you're looking at a house sit to see if, this is going to be a good opportunity to apply for and to try to get?
For me, because I work remotely, and my husband, although he's semi-retired, he works from home as well. And we will look after, any home and animals and one thing or another. However, for us, one of the key when we look for a sit is internet connection. And this is getting to this is being very practical. Internet connection, because not all internet connection is equal. We've had to turn sits down in amazing places simply because we would never have been able to work. So if that is important to you as a remote worker, you need to really, because on things it will say basic Wi-Fi. The first thing I always ask when I apply is, when you say basic, what do you mean by basic? And we've done speed checks and we've done everything to make sure that practically we can work from there. But when we look at everything else, I mean, we all have favorite breeds. We all have favorite animals. I mean, my breed and how I got my first sit, and this is another little tip, is people connect with like-minded people. My first sit I applied because they had a Springer Spaniel, and Springer Spaniels are my heart dogs. And so we immediately connected, and they knew I had experiences with Springers. And so that's another reason. But also, do you want to be in an apartment with a dog that you have to take out all the time because there's no garden to let it in? You have to know yourself. Would you be willing to get up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning in the pouring rain and take the dog out because there is no garden to let it out? So you have to know all of those practical things, and also location. I mean, when I'm in the UK, I like to come into Brighton, into the office and be with the team. So I look for sits in the Brighton area, but also know whether or not you can do the complete dates. If you look at a sit and you think, oh, well, I can do it, but I'm not, I might not be able to do this, don't even bother. You need to be able to do the sits that the required dates. You also need to know, whether you can get there. You have to have travel plans. The practicality is that you always also need financial, you need to have financial independence. So if anything happens, you've got money to back it up. There are all the practical things as well as looking for the sits. But the sit is the one that fits you and fits your experiences. And I will say to sitters right now or anybody that's looking to get involved with this, is the one thing you really need to do all the time is keep your owner's hat on. You keep that mindset of the owner and ask yourself, what is it that I would want to know about me? And what is it I would expect from me if I was this owner?
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I think it is really important to put yourself in the position of both sides of it, and then so that you can get really clear on the expectations and that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. And absolutely. And the final thing I'll say is that, it doesn't have to restrict you as being somewhere and able to explore the location and the area. Cats, as we said in the beginning, Ryan, are much easier. They're more independent. You don't have the commitment with a cat time-wise that you do with a dog. But also, dogs needn't restrict you because there are so many places that you go to that are dog friendly, and what better way to explore a town or a city than to take your new 4-legged friend with you. So it doesn't have to restrict your ability to actually explore.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point as well. So it's like the balance of like that responsibility while still being able to be in a great place, which is super awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this conversation has been so fun. It's definitely got us inspired to go create profiles on trusted house sitters. So thank you for your time today, Angela. If people want to find out more about you and what you do or more about house sitting, where can they go to find you?
They can come to trustedhousesitters.com. We have obviously a social community. They can come to Facebook, to Instagram, to Twitter, and you'll find it all under Trusted House Sitters. I can be contacted directly, Angela at trustedhousesitters.com. And we also have a 24/7 membership services team that are based here in the UK, and they're available on live chat, phone, and email. And that's another thing that you're supported throughout your membership by membership services. And the other thing for owners to know also is that when they join, included in their membership is access to a 24/7 veterinary helpline, and that's included in their membership fee. But there's so much support and so much, because we want everybody to be successful. We want everybody to achieve with their Trusted House Sitters membership what their goals are, and we don't want anybody to join and not be successful. So we're here to support everybody.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for your time today. This has been such an awesome conversation.
I've loved it. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you on the site.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at World Wanderers 1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.